what the market is like. If you're considering moving, you probably care a little bit about today's conversation. If you I do want to emphasize this is Darshan Talks live stream. I'm your host, Darshan Kulkarni. I'm an attorney. I'm a pharmacist, and I advise companies with FDA-regulated products. Having said that, I'm not your attorney. I'm not your pharmacist, so this is neither legal advice nor business nor clinical advice. Both Stuart and I are having conversations, so these are just considerations and don't necessarily reflect the opinions of the host, the guest, our clients, or employers. If you like what you hear, please leave a comment, please subscribe and share. Or feel free to ask our guest questions. You can also reach out to me on Twitter or go to my website at DarshanTalks.com. You can also find Stuart on his LinkedIn profile, and I'm showing that on the screen right now. So it's linkedin.com/in/tenhoor. Or you can actually find him via email at Stuart@StuartTenHoor.com. Hey, Stuart, how are you?
Good afternoon. I guess it's afternoon already. I'm doing well. Thanks, Darshan.
No problem. It is afternoon already. Just got here. I'm excited. I want to talk to you a little bit about this changing in the market. I mean, for the last few times you've come on, we've talked a little bit about how the market, the Great Resignation, if you will, and it's always been because I mean, my opinion is there was a lot of money in the market, and people were going, "Let's bring in the help because we need to do all these different things." What you said to me right before we started is things are finally slowing down, but not necessarily all slow. It's sort of changing. The market is changing. Could you talk a little bit more about what's going on, what you're seeing in the market? Because to me, it's the canary in the coal mine of what might happen soon.
Yeah, I think lawyers and accountants tend to be privy to new developments in the field that they're working with because when the changes occur, lawyers are either helping implement it or accountants are documenting it and preparing for it. So I think this market right now, in terms of the number of deals that law firms are doing, acquisition of life science companies, mergers of life science companies, I think that might have crested a few months ago. There's still work. Still demand for lawyers that do that work. But I do think that the orientation of the law practices I deal with in the major law firms is, because I work in the DC metro area quite extensively, is shifting. If you're an FTC lawyer, if you're a FCC lawyer, if you're working at DOJ with compliance and enforcement, if you're working in front of the FDA, there's a lot of activity right now. There's more of a regulatory focus to this current White House administration, and that is getting law firms in particular the desire to ramp up. That also goes into the area of in-house work, because in-house lawyers don't often have, super specialty. I guess if you're Amazon or Facebook, you got 1,000 lawyers, you can have people that focus only on antitrust.
Yep.
But most companies don't have an antitrust expert on the staff. So they're using law firms with the capabilities to help them out.
So that's kind of interesting, right? So you said that I'm going to piece that different pieces of it and pull that out. But you talked a little bit about the cresting of the life sciences mergers. So does that mean that you're seeing a lull coming in the M&A space, or what are you seeing, sort of?
I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I just get that from data points I receive through regular communications from entities that work in that space.
Sure.
But I do see there isn't as much money on the sidelines as there were 18 months ago. I think when the pandemic hit, pretty much everything shut down for 4 or 5 months until people started to cope better with it.
Yeah.
Then certainly a lot of law firms in 2020, the second half of 2020 and throughout 2021, it was a very robust time for law firms. There was money on the side that was coming out when new activity was springing up. And law firms last year were flush with cash. have now been spending it because the salaries for associates went up. I don't want to say exponentially, but it went up significantly. And that talent pool for that type of money is
Sorry about that.
just not as robust as the law firms would have liked to see.
So, are you seeing that since the salaries are let me understand that actually. Did you just say that the salaries are now more robust than they were before? Are you saying that they are cresting again? So let me get that clarification for you.
Yeah, I would say that the last 18 months, associate salaries, for instance, and then that translates into counsel salaries, and then that translates into non-equity partner salaries, and then that translates into partner draws and equity, the division of the equity. It all had an impact. And what we're seeing now is, the top tier law firms in America are paying first year associates $215,000.
Right.
So, if you're 25 years old, fresh out of law school, the chance to make 215 is pretty attractive to most people. They have, significant debts. Many of them do. It's not inexpensive to go to law school.
Yeah, but I think it's also we should emphasize that not everyone gets the chance. It's not like everyone gets a chance to go work at these top tier law firms. These are
no, it's an elite, more condensed number for sure. But I think all that is a driver to compensation levels in all different pecking orders of lawyering.
For sure. The reason I asked that question is my own conversations with people. I'm finding that the mad rush. I felt like till maybe about 2-3 months ago, there was a mad rush for employees, and that mad rush just meant I'll throw whatever money I have to so I can get someone in. And as interest rates have started rising, I'm seeing a more considered approach in that, yes, I still need these people, but do I need them in this space, and can I be smart about what I offer them? Is that just the people I'm talking to, or are you talking to different people?
I mean, at the macro level, coming out of a pandemic to some large degree, Ukraine, inflation, interest rates rising, all have some impact. I'm not an economist. I don't know how much, but
Sure.
I do see that, the challenge, the dilemma for legal employers, as I focus on life science lawyers, the dilemma is, do we build capacity first, or do we build, the amount of work that we're handling? Because you don't want to go out and get that work if you don't have the people to do it. But if you hire the people to do it, then you got to go out and find the work. So it's kind of a two-edged sword there in terms of which direction you head in. I mean, it's easy if you have, 3,000 hours worth of work you can't get done to hire someone to do that, assuming you can hire them. It's another thing where you have 1,000 hours of work to give an associate and you're nervous, I can't pay that person $200,000 and only keep them employed half-time because, billable hour requirements have gone up the last 5 years from maybe 1,800 to 1,950 or 2,000. So that's a lot of work for any person. It's a challenge to get all that work done.
I agree, which is interesting. So, as you know, one of the models I've been following, Stuart, is this idea of me connecting with law firms and essentially allowing them to resell my services and they, for lack of a better term, white label it, if you will. And that's been very, very successful. But it really, that does come down to the issues you're talking about, which is they are often going, I have some work, but I'm not sure I have enough work to hire a full-time person. And as they start growing that practice, I figure there'll be conversations where they go, do we want to bring someone else on full-time, or is this the right relationship where I just don't keep the overhead? And that works out a little bit better. But one of the things you'd actually told me, and I found this to be very, very interesting, was there's a certain size at which a regulatory attorney starts making sense. Below that size, and below that size of the law firm, a regulatory attorney is unlikely to have enough work to keep them busy. Could you talk a little bit more about? I don't know if you even remember that conversation. But I found that to be very interesting. So, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to discuss that, because I think it is an interesting issue. It's just my empirical evidence from years of doing this. I would say that, yes, if you're a law firm, you have 500 lawyers, you can probably keep one life science FDA regulatory lawyer pretty busy. There are law firms with 200 lawyers where I place people at that keep a partner pretty busy. Even though they're smaller, just the nature of their work lends itself to more cross-referral work in life sciences. I would say that's just a benchmark. I think another benchmark is if you're a lawyer in a food and drug practice and all you do is counseling. That's frequently tough to get over 1,500 billable hours a year, because the assignments you get, it's 5 hours here, 20 hours there, maybe it's 50 hours there. The big firms, a Latham and Watkins, they're able to hand somebody coming in the door a lot of due diligence type work for transactions and, maybe some compliance or enforcement litigation. It's a lot easier to bill more hours on big assignments that might generate more than $1 million in fees if you're in a firm like that. So, you feel better as associates don't like to come in with 200, 300, 400 hours less than the target. And it's a tough life to be an associate if you're having that situation, because you're almost knocking on doors, figuratively, in this environment, to try to get enough work to hit your target and, get a bonus, or, not put yourself in hot water with the firm as they evaluate, gee, is this person, really economically viable?
So what do you advise a new associate who's considering law firm A versus law firm B? What should they be asking themselves to evaluate which law firm to go with?
Yeah, number one, it's kind of a gut feeling. Do you like the people? Do you feel like they have work that you're going to enjoy? Do they seem to have a road to a more robust, hiring, or what I'm trying to say, a more positive upward vector in terms of promise for the type of work you want to do? Maybe you like the really well-established places. Maybe you like the, to be more on the development side. I've learned over the years that 80 to 90% of lawyers are not really business people. Their focus is not, let me get clients. I know a number of partners who are originating well over, $1 million of client work in law firms, some of them 5 or 10 million. And they'd rather go out and get the business than do the work. But I would say the majority of lawyers are the other way around. They like the challenge, they like the work, they like to not worry at night whether their next case is going to come in or not. So they're more interested in having a secure environment where the work is generated that they can do. So I see that a lot. But if you're an associate and you're evaluating offers, opportunities to work in different law firms, you look at their reputation. Do you have any colleagues from law school, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, who work at the firm? Some very few lawyers that I know, they might go directly into the FDA. They have a very public-oriented outlook on the practice of law. They're very comfortable, striving for the public good. And, as a commercial litigator or as a transactional person, that might not be the case. So I think each person has to evaluate, where is the situation that I resonate to as much as possible. Being in a law firm can be a lot of fun. It can also be a ton of work. Everybody knows that. But once you accept that reality, the question is, do you like the people you work with? Is it interesting work? Are you meeting interesting people? Are you finding opportunities to advance your career, whether that's writing an article collaboratively with a partner or another lawyer in the firm. I know people that stay in touch with their law school professors, and, lo and behold, 18 months after they graduate, some opportunity comes up and the professor's like, hey, John or Mary, can you help me with this? So, there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, the beauty we have today, when I started in the business 30 years ago, the internet was, very conceptual and not too well understood. Today, you can Google virtually anything. I mean, I write posts on LinkedIn all the time, and I'm like, oh, what does that word mean exactly? I better be sure. And boom, I Google it, and 20 seconds later, I go, oh yeah, well, there's a difference between compliment and compliment. So it's there's just a tremendous advantage that we have today because technology is amazing, really.
It's funny you say that. And I think the words you're using are the words of wisdom and the words of someone who's seen things go wrong. I'm working with a relatively young lawyer right now, and my experience in the conversation so far has been they really start the conversation from how much are you willing to pay me? At least that's the initial focus in their heads. And
Yes.
and I don't get me wrong, I was that lawyer at some point. And what I found at that time was the salary you pay me reflects how much you value me. And that is the basis on which I will make a judgment on whether I want to work with you or not.
Yeah.
But I think that's, for lack of a better term, ignorant on my part when I was making decisions purely based on evaluating whether the money being paid to me was a reflection of how much they valued me, because the money being paid to me is really more a reflection of what the market will bear. And the type of work I do and the amount of people who come back to me and ask me to do more work is more a reflection of whether they value me or not. So how do you talk to these new associates, new people working in a new job, and explain that they need to look beyond the salary? Because it's so difficult to do that.
Yeah, that's a good question, I think. Appreciate that. There's no question that on the list of goals that you might have, or the list of criteria when you enter the job market, money's number 5 on the list.
Right.
There's culture's an issue. A number of other factors come before money. A lot of people get their eyes covered up a bit when the money is pretty significant. I tell every person I work with, and I presume that they have more than one offer. Sometimes they only have one offer, so it's you'd think it's easier. Sometimes it's harder for somebody to decide if they only have one offer. But if you have multiple offers, I always ask people to decide if the offers were identical, no difference between them, which is hard if somebody's got an in-house offer versus a law firm offer versus a government offer.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just say every opportunity is precisely the same. Where would you want to be the most? And then sometimes in reality, they have less money offered, a smaller bonus or a lower base or whatever. Then the question is, if you really want to be at that other place, let's go back to them and let's make a counteroffer and say, hey, I have X from this company or this law firm, whatever. And frankly, I'd rather be with you guys, but I don't want to disadvantage myself and take less money. Can you match this? And frequently in a bidding war in this environment, it's pretty common. They'll say yes. And then at that point in time, you have to say, I accept. You can't say, well, let me think about it. Because you've countered, and to maintain your respect and appreciation for you in the marketplace, because the food and drug bar is small and word gets around on people. So your goal is to make sure you're doing everything above board. You're straightforward in terms of your goals. But I've seen that happen time and time again where firms will match, especially firms. Companies will. I just had a person that accepted an offer. The base was a little lower than he wanted, and he countered because he had a higher offer. and they went up on the bonus potential significantly, but not, bonus is not the same as base.
Right.
But anyway, and he said to me, very educated and intelligent and mature guy. And he said, okay, I countered. They gave me in. I can't really say no at this point. So, that was a wise move on his part. And not everybody is intuitively so wise. So I do my best to be the advisor.
It's interesting you say that. Here's a comment from Mallory McLaren. The X factor here is the extent of the debt that the law graduates bear. It's monstrously expensive to get the qualifications to even be able to be qualified to perform this type of work to begin with. And first of all, Mallory, thank you so much for the question and the comment. But isn't that true, Stuart? The idea that we work from this ivory tower of, oh, you should be thinking about culture and you shouldn't be thinking about money. But the truth is, you have debt to pay, and that plays such a big role. So, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, that's a very concrete question, which I appreciate. Yeah, people have $200,000 in debt to get through 3 years of law school, and they might have had some from undergraduate. Yeah. And I understand that. I mean, there's nothing wrong than getting the best money, but I don't think a $10,000 difference on a $200,000 plus offer is ultimately, in the long run, worth going after simply because it's a higher amount of money. I think your peace of mind is more important. People sometimes resent it. I mean, I hear a lot of that. Gee, they pay me a lot of money, but I hate it here. I mean, we're only in life. We only have life for so long. May as well do the best we can. And that's easy for me to say because, I'm a pretty senior guy and I have plenty of money in the bank. So money doesn't matter to me so much as it did, 30 years ago. But I understand Mallory's point. I'm just saying you got to still evaluate, is this the place I most want to be?
That's a fair point. So let me ask you this other question. As I'm a associate that's developing, as I'm a lawyer who's developing, is it better for me to learn to hone my craft? Or is it better for me to become that rainmaker you were talking about earlier? What is more difficult to be? And how do you recommend people start positioning themselves?
Yeah, that's interesting to reflect on for a minute, because I do believe that people want to position themselves where they're using their greatest strengths.
Okay.
So if you're really good at sales, I actually did a post on LinkedIn yesterday. I had a guy with two hats. One said lawyer and the other said business person. Mm-hmm. And the question is your highest and best value giving high-end business advice to clients, and that's more for partners and associates, although there's some associates that do this too. Is your highest and best use giving that kind of valuable instruction and guidance to a client wrestling with a business quasi-legal issue? Is that your highest and best use to give that advice, or is it better to have you focused on your law books and your past experience to write a great memo on addressing the legal issues? It just depends on your orientation.
So you wouldn't say that, and I'm genuinely surprised by this, because to me, growing up, I always thought that the people who will be invited the most is the people who bring in the most money. On the other hand, what I'm hearing you say is that's all well and good, but you still need people who can do the work and do it well. And depending on what your orientation is, one is more valuable. One will be a better fit for you, though it may not be as valuable. Is that accurate? Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth.
Yeah, no, I think it's a synergistic relationship, especially in law firms. I mean, it's a synergistic relationship in companies as well. But oftentimes there's, in a law firm, you might have 500 or 1,000 lawyers or even 200. But it's synergistic. You need both parts of that team. I mean, I remember when I first got in the legal search business, I went to some ABA conference, and one of the speakers said, well, there's binder, minder, finder, and grinder. Those are the four.
Binder, minder.
Finder, minder, binder, and grinder. I
Okay.
mean, your managing partner might be the binder. Your rainmaker is probably the finder. The grinder might be the person that prefers to be in the back room, working on a brief till 2 a.m, getting that done. And then, what is it? Minder, binder, grinder, finder.
Yeah, you had the minder left over.
Yeah, the minder is just the wisdom of a partner who's been at the firm for 20 years might be able to give guidance both from a financial and firm management point of view and to associates. There's a lot of partners that love to mentor, and the smart associates will get in that situation as much as they can with as many different partners, or could be a law school professor, could be a fellow associate. And it's harder. It's definitely harder since the pandemic hit because people aren't in the office the same way. Some firms will tell me, "Oh, we've gotten closer since we've been on Zoom because it's easier. We don't have to go into the office. We're saving that commute time, and we're able to interface with 100 people, whereas in the past it would have just been 10 or 15." To the other extreme, which is, man, I just don't see anybody. I don't think I'm getting the mentoring I want. It's a very isolated existence, and I don't enjoy it. I think the people in New York City that have a one-bedroom efficiency or just an efficiency, they're striving to be in the office. They're missing that contact. If you have a bigger house and a nice garage or not garage, basement, law office that you use, you might say, "Hey, I haven't put 200 miles on my car this month, and I've gotten a lot of work done, and we're getting stuff done." I mean, the response times of people has grown from, folks that they don't have to. I mean, I remember this guy from Skadden that I used to have a beach house with 30 years ago, and he was in the office regularly till 2 or 3 in the morning. Skadden had a limo that drove their people, to the suburbs of New York City. To drop people off at 3 in the morning and pick them up at 7:30. I mean, it's just that environment is much less present in the post-pandemic world that we live in right now.
So first of all, Mallory is actually very, very happy with this conversation. So Mallory, thank you so much for being on and asking questions. We appreciate it. I do want to ask one last question before we let go, which is, as we start moving towards this push and pull of, do we want remote work versus do we not? How are you seeing the conversations going? Because I'm seeing, as you put it, a lot of people in the non-New York area saying, "I'm very, very efficient." I'm seeing employers saying, "I can't build a culture if you're all over the world." And then you've got some employees, such as New York, saying, "I want to be in the office. I really want to meet people." You've got employers saying, "I have to recognize the new reality." How does that all come together? And is there a special, one of the things we should point out is Mallory has a background, as do I, in being a bioethicist. And is there a special way, say, academia is treating certain professions involving law and ethics? Or is it sort of relatively blanketed across the country? Does that question make sense? A compound question.
A little bit, yeah. I'll form my own question and try to answer it. I think that being, it just really kind of depends on the culture. What is the experience for individuals who are working in a remote kind of environment, a virtual environment? If that's what they gravitate towards, then I think that's the way to do it. If they're able to, find a place where they fit in better with what their goals are, whether they're an ethicist or a lawyer or whatever. I think that they might switch jobs just to get in a better situation for them.
So are you seeing a lot of this? Are you seeing people using using COVID to aim for better jobs, or generally for better quality of life and working at the top of their profession?
I think there's many, many people that have gotten used to remote work and find it to be quite attractive.
Right.
They enjoy not having to commute. They enjoy being able to take care of the kids when an emergency comes up. I don't know how many dogs barking you've heard on a Zoom call before, but dozens and dozens for me.
Yeah.
But people enjoy that, and it's a recruiting advantage. I'm working on an in-house job right now for a trade association in the life sciences field, and the first question, because it's in a place, it's not like it's on a metro line or something that's easy to get to. The first question I'm getting from the candidates is, do I have to be in the office every day?
Right.
So they've gone from, we want somebody in the office 3 days a week to, 2 days a week is fine. And who knows, if they like somebody that they hire after 3 months, they might say, hey, 1 day a week's okay. It's just a question of comfort. What's your comfort zone as an employer? What's your current comfort zone as an employee? In terms of what you want, whether you want to be in the office a lot, or whether you want to continue a remote existence. Everybody wants to get together. There's no question that people like each other, and work is about human relationships as well as just getting the work done. But I do think recruiting advantages are handed at least 80 to 90% of the time, in my experience, to people that employers that give remote opportunities in a significant way.
We are well past time, and we appreciate people reaching out and commenting. So we appreciate that. Stuart, before we let go, I have two basic questions to ask you. First one is, what would be your parting words?
My first are to Mallory, and I hope, Mallory, you reach out on LinkedIn, because I always like to connect with people. But I guess my parting words are just, in terms of your work life, trying to achieve that work-life balance, and if that means remote work and saving your commute time, so be it. But try to find a place where you feel energized, where you're getting the kind of kudos for your work that you like to see. Everybody likes that. One of the things I've found over the years is that nobody gets enough feedback. Right. And I think you should be open to feedback, even if it's not positive, because that's just one person's thoughts. I get feedback. I have people that decide, yeah, you're not the right recruiter for me. I don't beat myself up about that anymore, because, hey, I've had doctors, different doctors I've met with, and I didn't like some of them. And I didn't go back to them. And they're fine doctors. I just didn't feel a connection.
Right.
So you need to feel connection to your workplace. You need to feel connection to the people you work with. You need to feel connection to the work. Making an emotional connection with the important elements of your life is what I think, when people are doing that well, that gives you the most satisfaction that you can have.
Very, very true. And last question, how can people reach you again?
Yeah, StuartTenHoor.com. I'm on LinkedIn. My website has a lot of information about our services and what we've been doing for more than 30 years now. And I continue into the future because I love what I do, and that makes it easy to do the work.
Perfect. Stuart, thank you so much for coming on. This was amazing. Mallory, thank you so much for participating. I hope you enjoyed as well. And for everyone else listening, please feel free to reach out to both Stuart and to myself. And I'd love to have additional conversations, as would Stuart. So thank you again, everyone. Stuart, pleasure. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Darshan.